Hello, hello, and welcome to the Psych Tech at Work podcast. I am your host, Dr. Charles Handler, coming at you with another awesome guest today. And my guest is none other than Nicole Mundy. Nicole is a senior research analyst at Talentech Labs. And we'll learn a little bit about what she does, or a lot about what she does at Talentech Labs. But I'm just going to, no spoiler here, but she helps enterprise organizations align themselves with TA technologies. So I'm familiar with that, something I do as well. And we're coming at this episode from two different perspectives, from the IO perspective and more from the advisory perspective on technology. So without further ado, please welcome Nicole Mundy. It is good to see you. We don't see each other too often, but now I got you here, so I'm going to ask you a lot of questions. It's going to be awesome. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a senior research analyst at Talentech Labs. I have a pretty long background in professional research, but I've been in the HR tech space for about 6 years now. And Talentech Labs, they've been around about 10 years. We are a research and advisory firm that focuses on innovative and emerging technology for HR and talent functions. We actually started as an incubator within a major RPO. So our mission from birth has always been to bring new technology into organizations of scale and more institutional organizations that tend to fall behind the tech curve. So that's been our focus, and we work with a lot of very large formal enterprise customers, and kind of try to bring a lot of these newer concepts in AI-enabled hiring to the enterprise market. And so that's kind of what we do with our syndicated research and our more bespoke research and advisory practices.
Very cool. And where are you talking to us from?
I'm in New Jersey.
Gotcha. The Garden State. Very nice. Very nice. What do you like to do there?
Well, I live down by the shore, so anything near the water is what's fun to do down here.
Gotcha. Yes, anything near the water is always great. I've never been to the Jersey Shore. My aunt used to live in New Jersey, and we went there a lot, and it was pretty cool. I had a lot of fun, but never been to the shore there, so I have to do that someday. So you actually know a lot about assessments. For non-IO psychologists, you've been somebody your knowledge has impressed me over the years. And you're here because it's fun to talk to you, but also because you have really, again, just such a viewpoint as a consultant to large organizations who are looking at this stuff, maybe a little differently than, I might or other consultants might, I think. A bigger picture view and probably some really awesome advising. So tell us a little bit more about the research models. How are you getting in there in the trenches and learning? And I'm sure you do some consulting too. So where are you gathering all your information, your knowledge from?
Yeah, it's funny. And it's so awesome to hear you say that too, because I think when I first started at Talentech Labs, you were the first real expert on assessments that I met, and a lot of what you kind of have taught me has shaped my perspective on assessments in the application of technology. And so I do think that Talentech Labs is unique. We're analysts, and there's a consulting element to it, so that puts us in a unique situation where we can kind of sit in the middle and hear conversations between buyers and builders, as well as kind of look more at macro trends too. So it's really interesting. And for assessments too, would say it's just funny and we've talked about this a lot, but just thinking back like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. So the Talentech Labs, I'd say like our most well-known asset is our ecosystem maps, which look like big maps with lots of bubbles on them, and people familiar with that visual. 3 years ago, we were asking ourselves, like, should we just combine all of the interview and assessment product verticals into one big vertical? I mean, an automated interview, isn't that essentially an assessment in the sense that it's got, a structured evaluation, and should we just combine it? And at the time, it's just funny because I was like, hard no. Like, no way we
Yeah.
can do that. It's too confusing. It's wrong. But now it's a very different story. But I mean, I think the confusion exists now, regardless of how you want to
Yeah.
label your product.
Yeah. I mean, the lines are converging for sure. I would keep it separate in some ways, but again, the AI component is starting to merge it all into one. It's really great. And I've been in this position too, to be in the middle, to represent the buyer with this stuff, because it is very hard to tell differences. And to your point about the ecosystem map, I mean, I've been doing that just for assessment and interviewing stuff for a long time. And I got up to 450 of these things, and thank goodness I'm learning and the AI is getting better. So I was able to train AI to do my analyses, because I wasn't going to do it again because it was just too much. And I just still find out about somebody new every day. I don't know how all these firms are going to be able to be supported, other than moving away from being called an assessment firm and plugging more into platforms. But you're losing something there. So it is complicated. It's always been a fragmented market. And now it's like, ooh, super duper fragmented. So what do you think? I'm interested in your opinion. You know, what's changing about assessment? You've been doing this a while. I would say the last 6 years have brought the most change in assessment probably ever, except a lot of the big providers aren't changing, right? They're just still doing the same thing. And is that a good thing or a bad thing? You know, I can't tell the answer for sure yet.
Yeah, well, for those, those traditional, providers, like the ones that have the most reputable and the most validated assessments. I mean, the thing that I guess it surprised me the most, I don't know if it still surprises me, but I haven't quite reconciled it yet, is
Right.
just the absence of IO psychology data science in the majority of AI recruiting tools that you see on the market today. When you ask the average provider about the validity of their solutions, they will talk endlessly about how they validate their AI models and how they debias them, but they get pretty lost the minute you ask them about, things like construct validity and criterion validity. And that used to be kind of the way that I would differentiate types of solutions. And as far as I know, that is still, the way that our government will define and then differentiate between, different processes that are compliant or not. And so I think that certainly has changed in the sense that what does the word scientific validation mean and how it's being used and why it's still important and where and if. I mean, I won't say if, but I mean, you as an IO psychologist certainly have an interesting thought on that. That's why I've consulted you on it before.
Yeah, well, first of all, it is very true that in the IT world, validation and bias are a completely different thing. There are sets of processes that you're using with data and systems. They mean in some sense the same thing, but the way to get there and how they're defined and the role they play, is very different. And I agree with you on the IO psych side. I've seen more of that happening kind of, but again, I've been running analyses on the database I have, and it's great to have the AI built into it because I don't have to do any math or any spreadsheets or anything. And what I'm able to see there is that, so I have a risk rating scale of 0 to 5, 5 being, 0 being no AI, 5 being a fully autonomous, you press a button to say, go hire me, which nobody's really doing. And if you look at the 4s and from the 4s to the 5s, the distribution there is pretty much the higher the risk, the less IO psychologists you have. And the overall distribution is interesting in that the two most sets of companies are companies that use no AI in the assessment space and companies that are heavily using AI. And this is a good segue, I think, into another piece of the conversation. I included anybody who's using any kind of predictive piece of information. So if it's a fit score, if it's some kind of talent score, if it's matching, if it's interviewing, any of that stuff is in there now because it is all assessments and it is all coming under the exact same thing. You're predicting someone's success on the job by looking at them in some way, and that has to remain job related. And that's where some of our issues are. But if we take a minute to talk about talent assessment and then what is it evolving to, or what other things are are doing the same thing as talent assessment, but they're not the rigorous scientific stuff. So what do you see out there? What do your clients ask about?
Well, it depends a lot on the industry that they're in, and certainly the regulatory environment that they operate in. I think there's, for those that are currently no AI, and we actually work with a fair number of those organizations that, and you think, well, if they're no AI, why do they work with us? And it's because, they're still trying to find a way to incorporate AI into their hiring processes, because I think what any company understands is that it's just required and to be able to operate today with just the volume of applications that you're getting and the dwindling resources you have on the people operations side of it. So it's sometimes it's a little bit more on like what can be automated, and that can be a no AI or a low AI solution. Although when it comes down to it, the kind of intelligence that usually an enterprise will need in order to extract meaningful insights from either an individual candidate or from like a more of just a labor demand perspective is still going to require some AI. And that's I think that's just inevitable based on the fact that we've sort of gone remote, almost entirely remote globally with our hiring processes and a lot of work too. And so that's just going to raise the footprint of data that you have to collect. And so it's often, I would say, for like AI interviewers, people are still kind of wanting a global solution. I mean, that's always the dream. I think even if you're just using a more traditional assessment format, it's to just have one solution that you can deploy globally for all of your talent evaluation, screening, interviewing needs. And in theory, like there are solutions that can support this in terms of technology, but kind of like what we said earlier, not in terms of professional expertise.
Yeah.
So it's the same old story you hear. It's about getting adequate expertise and resources and also adequate like global consensus and adoption to maintain that kind of a program, whether it's an AI interviewer or anything else.
Yeah, I've seen that firsthand in that, working for companies that started to kind of devalue the psych part and turn it into SaaS, type of technology, which is, there's friction. There's a lot of friction with assessment. There's friction to make sure it's valid. There's friction for candidates. There's, friction on the system of collecting the data. So but the big companies know and they use it. And I think that's really important. Like Amazon has by far the most IO psychologists around and some of the most sophisticated stuff. And did you know they're starting to sell their assessments to the open market at this point? They just started doing that. I have no idea how it'll be done or whatever. I was at PsyOp conference with some friends from Amazon and they didn't even know about it, until recently. So stay tuned for that. That could be pretty interesting. What are the kind of questions that your clients, big enterprise global companies, what kind of questions are they asking about AI, about their hiring process? Why are they coming to you all?
Well, so I think a lot of companies, they made some pretty big bets on their AI strategy last year. And so this year they've been kind of trying to deliver on them. We are getting quite a lot of interest, a lot of big companies sort of trying to understand like where exactly are their peers in the market? Where exactly are they in terms of AI adoption? Because it's funny. You would think a lot of the top 10 organizations in the world, those that have been public about their AI strategy, you'd think that they'd be using AI all over the talent assessment process, but that's actually not the case. I would say maybe around like 10% of the top 10 enterprise organizations are actually using AI to automatically assess active applicants, like where it's the most sensitive legally.
Yeah,
that's not a lot compared to when you consider how many of them are have purchased these AI native platforms and tools.
Yeah. I talk to a lot of my friends that do that, and a lot of times they do pilot these things and look at them, and a lot of times, most of the time, they're like, we can't really use that or it didn't work. What type of AI strategies are you seeing, I mean, these are big global things, right? So it's easy for the company to say, well, we have a chief AI officer, we're doing AI ethics. I'm sure everybody in every function is looking at it. It's so easy in supply chain, manufacturing, logistics, there's no humans involved. They're not high risk use cases, but you start getting to humans, and then, hiring's at the top of the pyramid for risk. So what are some of the more interesting, AI strategies for companies that you've come across? How do they do that?
Yeah, so like just talking about risk, I think anytime that you're trying to introduce an AI workflow or an agent workflow into hiring is where it gets really tricky. I mean, for one isolated task or one kind of separate output, like that's lesser of risk. But when you want to connect certain parts of the process, certain steps in the hiring process, that's almost like the bridge that a lot of our clients are trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sometimes what we're doing is really just trying to look at the nature of the AI that's being used in the matching or the assessment, because there are varying degrees of advanced machine learning,
Right.
And then there's what I guess you wouldn't call like true machine learning, but it's sort of keyword and AI combined, with like a combined technique.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of it is like most things in life is how you can articulate it in a way that your stakeholders feel comfortable with, because it's just with a lot of these more novel tools, the legality is still ambiguous.
Yeah.
And ambiguity can be your friend, but sometimes it's not.
Yeah.
So and that it's almost like there's more of a potential opportunity to explore these an automated screening solution with an AI tool that has yet to have any sort of case law around it.
Yeah. No, I mean, we're about to enter into a lot more of that, which to me, if you care about this stuff, it's all about validating it and making sure it's job related. You got no issues if you can show that in a meaningful way without discriminating. Even actually adverse impact is okay technically if you have validity. Of course, nobody wants it or really, does that. Do you see a lot of FOMO in these people where they're like, we better start using this stuff for recruiting because everybody's telling us how much time and money we can save and our competition's going to, kick our ass because we're not using it? How does that work?
Sometimes that is a part of just a more of a socialization of bringing these ideas into the organization. And so if there's FOMO, we may come in and do workshops and sessions and discussions with a leadership team and with maybe a group of sort of cross-functional stakeholders to bounce ideas off people and kind of sort of test the waters on some of these concepts. But I mean, I think where it can go wrong is when organization will feel competitive pressure to buy a system that has AI capabilities, but they give you the option to disable them or enable them when you're ready. And so you buy the CRM or the hiring platform, and then you don't have these AI workflows enabled, and then you assume, well, eventually we'll work on it, and we'll catch up and we'll get the right approvals in place and then turn it on. But then here you are 3-4 years later, you're still not able to do that. So I don't know if that's always the best route to go is to sort of jump the gun on it. I'm not, but right now with a lot of agentic strategies, that's mostly just about doing a lot of internal processes. And that anything that's like HR self-service, employee self-service, digital front doors for new hires, like that stuff is less of a compliance issue. But I do think it's a little bit more of just having a lot of your administrative resources, in order. And that's always like, the stuff that's in the, in the back of the supply closet that nobody knows where it is. So then it's tough to sort of get that organized. There's certainly potential there. There's just not a whole lot it's just not attractive from an ROI standpoint,
Yep. Have you seen any instances where some of these tools that are doing match scores and all that kind of stuff are actually effective or working, or companies are like, wow, this is revolutionary? We have some outcomes information on it, or is it still just kind of in that initial, like you said, it's there, but it's not been switched on? And, to me, that's part of the thing. When it's right there, you don't have to buy a new technology. You don't have to get a new vendor. There it is right there. Somebody might just go ahead and turn it on and then you could be in trouble. I don't know. So what about that?
Yeah, I would say like even it just like there's a bump in time to hire, productivity, that it does help when you can have that matching kind of ranking or prioritization automatically, like in your ATS on the active.
Of course.
Like that does tend to help. It's not a magic bullet by any means, but it will, it will add some efficiency there, as long as it's part of the same, applicant review workflow. Yeah.
Well, and efficiency doesn't mean effectiveness. They've been tearing apart resumes and ranking people on that forever. And you have to do that with such a high volume. We all know the friction has been there forever. These tools purport to, change that, but at what cost? And then again, if your people that you're seeing there aren't really the best people, then what are you getting out of that? But I understand the need is strong, and you're selling this stuff. You're solving or potentially solving a giant problem. I mean, maybe creating others, but hiring is one of the hardest things going on for companies right now. And then everything's kind of bonkers out there. Have you seen companies slowing down, throttling up? So from a standpoint of jobs that you see where people are thinking about, we need a lot of these or we need way less of these, any trends or anything there?
Not that we have a direct hand in, but we do hear a lot that, the success of whatever the organization's AI strategy is, a lot of people's jobs depend on that success. So whether if it's, maintaining headcount in HR or throughout the organization, there's a lot riding on the ability for people in their jobs to use AI, as well as, of course, the people in the talent space to find those people. It's in terms of trying to find new skills, though, I mean, certainly the sourcing and using some of the AI, the same AI tools to source and assess people at the very top of the funnel. That's certainly an attractive idea, or it's an attractive kind of need for our customers too. But a lot of it is the quality that you have. Like if you already have a talent pool of like the best candidates in the world at your disposal, the matching tools don't have that hard a time. It's much tougher if you just don't have those tools in place. So it doesn't reduce the need for a good pipeline or a good sourcing strategy either.
Yeah, none of this stuff is automatic. It's all about looking at these things. That's the thing. You got to look at it systematically. You've got to evaluate each of your steps. I mean, just plugging something in that's supposed to be a panacea for you or whatnot, I don't know that ever works. And I don't know that that's how people always end up implementing it. In my experience working with talent functions in giant companies, the movement is glacial as well. I mean, just getting a new ATS in or installed is a year sometimes, and driving adoption and proliferating this stuff. So the AI stuff's probably not much different. The interesting thing is the evolution, how fast it changes, and the capabilities just keep getting better and better. So we're moving into a time when, honestly, some of this autonomous stuff may do a really, really damn good job. It's very possible. I think we'll talk about the future of all this in a minute. I don't want to put you on the spot. You have any questions for me? I always like hearing what might be on your mind that I could help with.
Well, I think one of the interesting things that I've asked you about, and probably could still ask you a million questions, is to if you're trying to identify the right tools to support a skills-based organization or a skills-based talent
right
strategy, one part of it that the AI recruiting kind of it solves and sort of worsens the problem a bit
Right.
is, first of all, what does a validated skill really mean? Of course, because
Yeah.
that can be subjective. But if you want to really validate skills as opposed to inferring them or predicting them,
Yeah.
how are these tools able to do that? And how do you balance the need to validate a current skill that you can throw at a job right away versus predicting future success and potential success and all of those other important priorities that organizations have?
Right. Yeah. Well, that's a very difficult question to answer in some ways and an easy one to answer in others. So, I mean, the very first thing is you've got to define what a skill is. You got to objectively define that, and you got to be able to measure that. So, if you don't have that, you don't have anything. And I think that's where we know skills is the buzzword. Everybody's using that. They're using validated skills. They're using not as much durable skills, which I do like that idea, because when you see a lot of these platforms, when they say it's a skill, it's just a label of, Excel, or you can tie your shoes or something. And I've had a chance to look for a couple of startups I work for kind of on the back end of that or behind the curtain of that stuff. And it's usually very poorly organized and not very defined. So you're kind of building a house on sand if you're trying to select people based on those things. Now, do you know a programming language, Java, or, whatever, MongoDB, whatever it is? That's a little bit easier if you give somebody an assessment. Otherwise, how do you know? The problem is, what is that going to require? It's going to require assessments at scale, and because that's how you validate, right? In the traditional sense now, you've got to get some kind of feedback loop. You've got to measure something about someone and compare it to what it is they're supposed to have and to the job. And that is not easy to do. There's a lot of friction there. So, initially now the friction is reduced by saying we're going to distill all these skills. And the validation part, though, is kind of, it's not murky, it's clear. How to do it at scale is difficult. So I have seen some presentations and have pretty close friends who are running assessments for global companies, and they have installed skills-based hiring programs. And they're not just buying one vendor and switching it on. I can promise you that. They spent years, 3-5 years building a program, first defining the skills, seeing how they track across the whole organization, inventorying the skills that the company has and needs for the future, right? So you're identifying the key skills for your workforce. Then a lot of them do use AI tools, but they're very carefully curated on the front end. They're not just taking any garbage out of those. They've got some pretty good pathways defined in a way that they can trust the data. And then it's about assessment, it's about measurement across multiple intervals and being able to collect that data. One of the most interesting things, and I don't know how much experience you've had with this, but over the last couple of years, I've tapped in a little bit to the ed tech space, and there's a lot of really cool stuff going on with validation and like credentialing. The way they look at it is just so different than the work world, because they actually have pipelines and pathways to start measuring skills that people have through the educational experience, through their peers on platforms. It's a little pie in the sky, but the idea is you're getting a read on people's durable skills mostly as they evolve. And then by the time you get to the workforce, you've got kind of a passport or something that you can use to say these things are verified. And then the sphere of what data goes into validating it is not just a test, but it's a long-term dream, I think. I don't know that we're going to see that kind of a change that's required. And a lot of people I know have worked in that ed tech space trying to bridge into the world of work, and it's been very, very difficult. So those paradigms have to change. I don't know how soon, that's going to happen. I don't know. So there's my answer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking culturally. I mean, it's a lot of those ideas you're talking about it'd be hard to implement them in the US for sure.
Oh yeah. Like I worked on a project, and it's been a while now, 8 or 9 years, where the conference board sponsored this thing, and they got a grant. And the whole idea was you're going to go in and you're going to have two conditions in like 10 or 15 different enterprise companies. One condition is you throw the resume away and you just do assessments. The other condition is you just use your normal process. So there's kind of a blind, just assessment based. We were able to sell maybe 5 or 6 giant companies that said, we'd love to do this. And when we got started, not a single one of them worked, because by the time we got to operations of trying to implement this kind of a structure, it failed completely. Nobody would do it. It was just not able to wedge its way in there. So to me, that was pretty telling, in that you've got to go all in on this stuff from the top. And it's not always easy to do that when you have a lot of other things to go all in on. So that would be my answer there. Have you seen anyone, don't name any names, has anyone done a really good job of this that you're seeing?
No, although sometimes you see some good examples of an early career talent program there, especially when it comes to just attracting and bringing in people out of school, or regardless of if it's a 4-year institution or trade schools, and a lot of that is, I mean, you're hiring these candidates based on durable skills and their potential to learn skills and adopt skills. So I think sometimes you can have, but early talent is challenging too. It's just, that it's not supported as well from a lot of the kind of traditional like ATS and HRIS platforms. It's often like manually managed, or you have to get a separate platform because it's just structurally those roles are different. But if you're just talking about more of the programs for early talent and what these programs are looking for, those can work well, but they are very much, I think, like to your point, they're prioritizing those durable skills. Yeah, and they're prioritizing the people with strong future potential.
Yeah. So what's a platform? Like, we have so many flavors of platforms, and it seems to me it's becoming quite a platform play here. And that's another thing, your traditional assessment providers, they have assessment platforms, but famously hard for them to integrate or grow into something else. So you see a lot of companies acquiring, bigger platform companies acquiring assessment companies, but that doesn't mean they're actually using it. That's another one of the interesting things. So I don't, sometimes it's a head scratcher. Why are you doing this? But talk about that. What do you expect? What would, I don't know. When I'm just bringing that up, what comes to your mind about, let's talk platforms and not shoes?
It's almost like, I think, like the challenge that we're thinking about these platforms solving, it's still, you can have multiple platforms as long as you've got a way to integrate that data and you have people who are capable of interpreting and connecting it from point to point. Like that's not impossible. It is challenging for a lot of people to do. If you're trying to think of, well, how do I do it all in one platform? You can do it, but you do have to kind of unengineer what you might have been over-engineered. And it probably almost definitely has been. And again, it's also about adherence, just large scale adherence to certain standards by everybody. And that's so tough in assessments too, to make any assessment compulsory, let alone making it compulsory for all roles or all job levels or all business units. So like, come on, right? But one thing that I do see some potential in, if it can happen, is for an AI interviewer to be able to do high level screening or just to collect information. Like, we talk about like resume based hiring being phased out. For sure, it's true in the sense that recruiters and TA leaders can't trust resumes anymore. They don't, because it's not that hard to generate a resume that looks great. But it's the same issue again, looks good on paper. Like it's kind of back to the same
famous last words, right?
Words.
Well, resumes have been the scourge of all this for a long time, and no one's truly eliminated them. It's, you know, whoever does figure that out is gonna make a lot of money, but it may just naturally evolve that way. I don't know, but these platforms offer a lot of stuff, and you know, unlocking that stuff in a good way can be difficult, and combining a bunch of them obviously can get a mess. It can get very messy, as you said. You could chase your tail a lot. Or are any of these folks talking about, hey, we need to hire on AI literacy? Like, we want people coming in that have AI skills, and we value those in the workplace, and we're going to actually evaluate those or look for those. You know, what is the temperature there of your clients that you've seen?
It for those, I mean, you hear about it, and I do think when it comes to smaller organizations, especially those in the tech space, that's a lot easier for them to be more progressive and opening up evaluation of AI literacy. I still feel like most organizations that we are working with are still a bit on the defense. But again, that's because they are still trying to calibrate what is it about their large scale hiring process that has to change, and how much risk are they at right now with the way things are, and having no real way to validate the signals that they're getting. So that's understandable. From vendors that we talk to, the adoption, at least from a pilot or a trial basis, of AI assisted assessments is growing fast. So people are at least willing to give it a shot, like anywhere from 30 to 40+% of a customer base being at the very least willing to have that option. So that's good. You know, and when you look at, like, you know, the top tier, like big tech companies, like Amazon, again, for example, I mean, that they've been pretty public and at least talking about how they have integrated AI assistants into their assessment process too.
So cool. Yeah, I mean, I think people are going to use it on the job, so you might as well let them use it in the application process in a controlled way. And we'll see more and more of that, I can promise you. But the AI skills are also going to get to be more just conversational, like, hey, you know, go out there and, I don't know, run all this data, bring me back a report, make a PowerPoint for my boss. All that stuff can be done pretty easily. So you may not even have to have those skills. You may just kind of need to know what you need. The prompt engineering stuff, and what I've thought for a while and seems to be coming true, is that the old school kind of prompt engineering that you'd see seems to get easier, but you can still, your ability still coax more out of these things. And I learn more and more, you know, every day on that. So you're, you know, that was a good segue into kind of the one of the final things I want to get your input on is cheating. You shared a really amazing white paper with me. I love the graphic at the end that has, like, here's the 15 ways that you can try to beat this stuff. But I've always thought it's whack-a-mole, kind of a zero-sum game. And again, my opinion is, and it's not universally able to be executed, is let people use this stuff and figure out how you can measure how well they use it, or just, you know, if you're using it as a job aid, use it as an application aid. It's not that easy, but anyway. So what are you seeing? Are companies hiring you guys to help create these strategies for them?
Almost getting there. I think the larger companies are still in the phase of trying to get a read on cheating as a threat and trying to get visibility on that, because it's not that easy. Like, a lot of forms of fraud in hiring, HR has just never really had the infrastructure to have visibility into that or to manage that. So, like, the whole concept of security in TA is, I mean, that wasn't a thing until recently, having a security architecture. And so, you know, just the existence of AI cheating or AI assisted fraud in the hiring process. It's funny too. I mean, it's good that I think that is also a driver of why there's a push to validate skills.
Yeah, 100%.
For sure. But what's interesting too is, you know, we're sort of tracking Like, what are the ways that companies are responding to the existence of AI cheating, and what sort of approaches they're taking to mitigate that? Certainly in the more, institutionalized like industries like healthcare and finance, probably most of them are still pretty like no AI, lockdown, browser lockdown for that whole process. But even with the most like strict no AI, zero trust approach to hiring, whether you're doing that or you're doing a full like AI assisted like full co-pilot mode, it doesn't matter how much AI you're adopting in the process. All of these approaches implement a competency based line of questioning, specifically follow-up questions, regardless of whether or not you're allowing AI use or not. The only way to get real signals that you can hire on is by getting the candidate to articulate their own reasoning and articulate their own work. That might be the one, like the most important skill a person can have if your job is AI assisted.
Yeah, nice. That's exactly right. An AI can complete assessments and you can use it while you're doing interviews and stuff. So the more kind of hands-on dynamic assessments that they can't really manage is good. They sure know how to write them. I've had a lot of experience with that. So if they know how to write them, they know how to beat them. But there's no substitute for watching somebody do the actual work, expanding it from just filling a bunch of bubbles to, here's some challenges, here's some things that we want you to do even dynamically in an environment. And I think that's where it's all going. So I'll wrap us up, but spend maybe, 2 minutes. What do you think the future is going to bring? Like, what do you expect to see next year and then in 5 years in the overall predictive hiring market?
Yeah, I mean, the way that if you look at just the way that technology itself is evolving, it kind of defies all conventional productization. So that it could be a matter of, and even, I feel like the builders of this technology have actually gotten a lot better really quickly. But at first, 8-10 months ago, they'd be like, is the way we're explaining our agentic, platform, our agent studio, is this going to make sense to HR people? It's like, let's keep trying to figure out how to explain that. It's a very different approach to looking at a solution as not as a product, but as infrastructure. So that could everything could sort of come out in the wash in that way. But I think that like it all goes back to then having capable people to use those tools. It's the difference between handing somebody a ready-made product or ready-made tool or something, or just giving them like raw ingredients, like here's the flour and some stones, make some bread. It's you got to have people that know how to do it.
Agents that know how to do it. I don't know, maybe in 5 years you'll just press a button and somebody will show up in your office that gets hired. It's the friction's just going to keep going away. Whether the accuracy increases, I don't know. And then of course half the jobs may even be gone. I don't know about that, but for sure. But certainly we're seeing some impacts now, only a couple years in. So who knows? So well, thanks so much for sharing all your experience and thoughts today. It's not a perspective I always get on here, so I do appreciate it. Tell everybody, how can you follow Talentech Labs? How can people follow what you're doing?
TalentechLabs.com. You can sign up for a research alerts. You can also check out, we have a new research platform launching very soon that you can pre-sign up for. It'll have access to our research as well as a community. So we're modernizing the way that we distribute this information and making it more holistic. But yeah, just go and check it out and explore the platform and let us know what you think.
Perfect. That would be awesome. And good. Well, thanks so much.